welcome to the nightly edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski, and my guest today was a member of the Illuminati, the Ordine, Nero, they call it in Italian, the family, the order, for over 30 years. She left 10 years ago, has a story to tell that will put chills right through your body. This isn't the type of story that I normally do every day, and it's a story I did an earlier show with Vali, and I'll tell you something. It is one thing to talk about the Illuminati in general terms. It's one thing to, from afar, talk about George Bush and everyone else. It's another thing to go deeply into the Illuminati and to discuss certain things that Vali's going to talk about, which are very graphic, very horrific, and we're going to go into it because I want to impress upon you folks that these people exist, they're dangerous, and they are deeply rooted in our country. Now, 20 years ago, when I was covering stories, I'm a print journalist by trade, and I was working in Rome for 6 years. This was back in the early 80s, and I'll tell you firsthand, I learned from people there during a number of scandals that were going on that the heart of these problems is the Vatican. It all goes back to the Vatican, and I can say that without question. I met people there who told me about it. I met people who went through the same, one woman who went through the same induction ceremony as our guest tonight is going to tell you about. And I also talked about, back then, how they had talked to people who said they were deeply embedded in America. With that, I'm going to introduce my guest, and I might add, Svali's only granted this one interview today with me. She said she couldn't sleep last night. It was very difficult, and I really want to thank you, Svali, for coming on and sharing this because I think it's going to help a lot of people, as my emails from this morning have showed. How are you tonight?
Oh, good. How are you, Greg?
Very good. I want to get right into this. You were born into the Illuminati, the family, the order. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and lead us into this induction ceremony in Rome, in the Vatican, when you were 12.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be brief because we don't have a lot of time, but I was born in the group as both of my parents were in it, so it wasn't a question of being recruited at all. I mean, from my earliest days growing up, that's all I ever knew was being part of the group. My training began at a very early age. It continued throughout my childhood, and by the time I was 12, in the group, normally a person's considered an adult by the age of 12, and right at the point of between 12 and 13, they actually do a formal swearing in into your adult role within the group. And for me, part of this was going to Rome. My parents here prepared me for it, but then I went to Germany because I'm with the German house. I was born in Germany, came to the United States when I was young. But because I belonged to the German house in Europe, I went to the German father's house, and from there went with him and the French father to the Vatican. And during that time, went through a ceremony. It's a very horrible ceremony. I mean, there's a room beneath the Vatican that a lot of people don't know about. You go below the basement level there, and I remember going down the stairs, and there's a room there, and it's a round room, and there's 13 catacombs that lead into the room, chambers, and they had taken a mummified figure from inside the catacombs and placed them beside each of the openings in the room, and they told me at the time that the spirits of the departed fathers were watching over the ceremony because they really believe that their roots go back to Rome and even pre-Roman times. They then held a ceremony, and there was a gold pentagram on the floor, but above the pentagram there was a black stone table. And
stay close to your phones, Vali, okay?
Oh,
Thanks.
okay. Well, there was above the pentagram there was a black stone table, and it was made of a shiny stone, and there were gold, like at the end there were like little, I know you call it like little channels to collect fluid on each corner, and they were made of gold. And during the ceremony, they sacrificed the little boy, and after that, the man, he was dressed in scarlet robe, went to he moved to the center, actually to the side of the room, to the side of the table, and I had to go forward and kiss his ring, kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my undying loyalty to the world order. And
now, stay close to the phone. Who was with you now in this when you were going through this ceremony?
The French father, he represented the French house. The German father, he represented the German house. There were some other adults there too. Some were Catholic Church officials, and there were 2 other children as well who went through the ceremony.
And you said there were 3 adults?
There's more than 3 adults. There was probably about, I'd say, 9 adults in the room with us total.
Now, what did they say to you after? I mean, what was going through your mind when they were sacrificing this child? I mean, just tell us, can you remember back to what you were feeling?
Well, I was terrified. I mean, I was absolutely terrified. This is one of the most terrifying things a person can go through. So I remember just thinking, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait to get through, It was like inside I kept, it's almost like you internally just talk to yourself or through it, like, I hope it's over soon, I hope it's over soon, I hope it's over soon.
Now, you're looking back now, why do you think what's the purpose of this?
I think it's to instill terror in people, because after the ceremony was over, the man conducting it said, may the same occur to you, or worse, should you ever break this oath. And at the time, I was so terrified that the thought of ever breaking that oath never even occurred to me, because I believed him. These people are not nice people, and when you go through something like that, it makes you very, not only does it instill quote-unquote loyalty, but instills a lot of terror.
Well, like I told you before, when 20 years ago, when I was approached by someone in Rome when I was covering these stories, and they told me a similar story when they were a child, and basically echoed what you're saying about what went on in their ceremony. This woman eventually committed suicide jumping off the Vatican roof.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. After that, I began researching this story in depth and found out some incredible things 25 years ago that are basically coming true now in this country. A couple minutes here before the break, now you left this ceremony, you're 12 years old. Tell us who you left with and what happened afterwards then.
Well, I left with the German father, and afterwards he praised me. He said, you did well, because I did everything I was supposed to do during the ceremony, and I didn't cry out or anything like that. And then we just went and we stayed at a local house. It was a wealthy person, and we stayed at the house, spent the night, and then we flew back to Germany the next day. And
did he tell you anything about how you did or what they expected of you?
No, before he had, but he just said you performed well, and he said this will help you rise in the family.
Okay, Zvali, just stay right there. We're going to get back. We're talking to Zvali, a member of the Illuminati for many, many years on the Genesis Communication Radio Network. The edition of the Investigative Journal on the Genesis Communication Radio Network, and we're talking to Zvali, who has been a member of the family, the order, for many, many years. She left 10 years ago. We were talking about her induction ceremony at the Vatican, how all roads lead to the Vatican when we're talking about the Illuminati. And before I get into the way they're organized, Zvali's going to tell you this organization that's incredible, just like a corporation, coming down worldwide to America also. I just wanted to mention, just to give you a short timeline to give you an idea, and Zvali, you might find this interesting too. After Pope John Paul I was killed, and I say killed, Officially, it was a heart attack. It should be known that he was only the Pope for 39 days, and during those 39 days, he was trying to do one thing, and that was to reorganize and to clean up the Vatican Bank, to expose a number of the Freemason Masonic priests and other members of the church that had ties to the Freemasons and the Mafia. He had given a list to Cardinal Jean Villot, which might have been a mistake because there's some shady dealings about this cardinal. But anyway, he gave a list to Cardinal Villot regarding the number of people he wanted out, and this was going deep into the Vatican scandals, into their corruption, into probably the first layers of this Illuminati and many of these other things that are going on. Well, a day after he presented his list, he was found dead in his chambers. John Paul then took over, never did anything, protected everyone. The Vatican bank never was cleaned up, and that's not fiction, though that's history. Svali, it does go back to the Vatican. Tell us about this organization that you learned about. You were a mid-level worker in this programmer, a mind programmer for years. Tell us about this organization that you learned about.
Well, I learned about it just by being there and seeing people and talking to people. But basically, like you said, it is very much organized like a large international corporation. In that sense, the headquarters would be Rome, the Vatican, because that's considered the spiritual center of the world for the Illuminati. From there, the power bases go to Europe. There's 12 men. They're called the 12 Lords or the 12 Fathers, and they each represent a country in Europe. And of those 12, the three ruling, it's a triumvirate, is the UK, France, and Germany, because those are the oldest houses. In the Illuminati, it's called the House, the German House, the French House, UK House. From there, America was considered a mission field, and so it was basically in the 1600s, the first Illuminists started coming over, and they established their power base in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now it's considered the spiritual center for the Illuminati, and from there, they divided the U.S. as time went on, and as it became developed into 7 regions. The East Coast, but there are 2 huge divisions for the group are the East Coast region, which is east of Mississippi, and the West Coast region, which is west of the Mississippi. Spiritual headquarters for East Coast are Pittsburgh. The administrative headquarters are in Alexandria, Virginia. On the West Coast, the spiritual headquarters are Portland, Oregon, and the administrative headquarters are San Diego, California.
Now, you originally were in Virginia, then you moved to San Diego, correct?
Yes. I was first affiliated with Alexandria and then with San Diego.
You know, you said that Pittsburgh was, I've heard that too, Pittsburgh, the spiritual capital. Was interesting to note that George Bush, right after he was elected, traveled to Pittsburgh and gave a huge speech to a Masonic lodge there. Find that interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's not coincidence. And then underneath the regional councils, as they were, there's a national council for the U.S., of course, over all of them, 13 men, and under them are the regional councils. And underneath the regional councils, then you have your local councils. And underneath your local councils are going to be your what they call sister groups, or what most people consider covens.
That's the lower levels, the ones carrying out some of the MK Ultra programs, other things like that.
Well, yeah, but they use a lot of the principles of MK Ultra at many of the levels, I mean, these people are well-versed in every aspect of behavioral science, physiology, human anatomy and physiology. I mean, they're considered the scientists, as it were, of the occult world. Because
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they study it. They know it. They know it inside out. And they use it and apply it.
Now, you were a mid-level trainer. You moved up the ranks quickly. Tell us a little bit about what, when you became an adult, I believe it was 22 years old, you began working as a trainer, a mind programmer. Tell us what this is all about. And you're working specifically with members of the organization, correct? And in your capacity, members of the military in San Diego.
Well, I actually started as a trainer when I was much younger. I started by the time I was 7, I was being mentored in my role. At the age of 12, I did become a full trainer, but I became a head trainer and sat on the regional leadership council at the age of 22. That's when I was overseeing other trainers and mentoring them and teaching them.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are starting to probably thinking, and I did it first. How do you manage this? You have a life. You are a wife. You are also married to someone in the same group. Tell us a little bit how this works, because I know you grow up with a lot of mind control, and we don't have time, I don't think, to go into specifically how they trained you as a youth, and I still think you feel some of the effects of it, as you were saying. But when you get to a point of working for this group, how do you manage both your day life and your night life, which was with the Illuminati mostly in the wee hours of the morning? Go ahead.
I think the best analogy I can raise for that is you may be a little bit different when you're at work than when you're at home relaxing. Because most people learn to some degree to compartmentalize the different parts of their life. The only thing is when you're a group like this is you learn to compartmentalize to a much greater degree. So that it's almost like you can do things not just in the night, but sometimes, I'd spend a month sometimes in Europe or over in Germany. So it was daytime too, but you learn that in that situation you act a certain way. But then when you're not in that situation, you act a different way. So
why are they so concerned about their children? I mean, they seem to be very concerned about how you grew up and others in your same role about, why are they basically involved in so much of this training that to me, like you were involved in the 12 disciplines, all this other stuff. Tell me what their mindset is.
I think if you were to ask them, they would say that they're helping the child develop their potential. They don't see it as evil or what they see is helping the child develop their capabilities, because all the training has a goal. They don't just sit there, I'm going to do something that's painful just to hurt you. I mean, they will do something painful because they're trying to induce an experience in the child. They believe it's inducing enlightenment. Does that make sense?
All right, good. We're going to, it makes sense. We're going to continue with that in the second half hour. Get into some of the different areas the Illuminati has infiltrated in our country. It's your knowledge on the Genesis Communication Radio Network. Okay, we're back with Svali. If we have some time in the next half hour, I may take a call or two. 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. And I know, Svali, I want to thank you for submitting to these interviews. On my website, I have a 4-part series, the last part appearing tomorrow, regarding the Illuminati. Much of it centered on you. Some of it centered on things I learned years ago. All of it talking about this devastating, this crazy plan to really destroy our country. We're seeing it play out right now. And I want to thank you. I guess this final curtain on your public chapter of this part of your life is coming to a close. I know after this interview you don't want to grant any more, and I can understand it's difficult, dangerous. And I know you didn't sleep last night thinking about it. I know they don't want you talking about this. About how many people in our country are involved in this group?
My estimate, based on what I saw, was roughly about 1% were Illuminists.
And that's a good amount. I mean, when you think about it, if they're organized. Now, tell me what you heard in your life from your perspective, being inside in this group, what their plans were, what the time frame is, as far as when they are planning to pull the curtain down on America, the military state, the rest of the things that we talk about daily. Go ahead.
Well, I was told that my children's generation would see the unveiling of it. I was told that I would be alive during it, but it would be when they come into their prime. So I was told that roughly within the next 50 years that this would happen. Actually, in the next 45 years or less. Their goal is to dominate the world. I mean, and when you think about it, this is being done through financial means through controlling finances, the media, government, and education. Those were the 4 primary areas that they sought to control. And
right, and I guess I can ask you, it isn't most of these people that are in our government right now, along with some of our high-powered media people, are all involved in the same plan, aren't they?
Yeah, to varying degrees, yeah.
And you know something, you talked about this next, about the financial collapse they had planned, and I know that you'd mentioned it, and you said it would make the Great Depression look like a Sunday picnic.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you heard about that.
Well, it just, in leadership, they would talk about that. I mean, it's all been planned out, and they would be manipulating the world finances to create, not just in the U.S., but, I mean, mainly, first it would start in the U.S., but then it would become a worldwide depression, an economic collapse that was meant to create a great deal of chaos, confusion, and fear, because their philosophy is that out of chaos comes order. That's out of chaos, order. And so they would do it through finances, because they know that if people feel that they're losing their money, they'll panic. And as a result of the depression or the financial collapse, and what was going to occur next would be, I was told, mass riots, looting, people, panicking because they didn't have enough money to live on, and then things would, crime and violence would increase too, and then the military would step in. The government would then bring in military control and enact all kinds of rulings for crowd control, and at that point, soon thereafter, it would just become open.
Now you lived this. You worked in it. You were part of it from birth. You were brainwashed basically to believe that you were doing something good for the world.
Oh yeah.
And what did they feel about people like me from middle class background, many millions of people just like me? How did they view the masses? How did you talk about them? Well,
they view the masses as sheep. The Illuminati believe that they are in the intelligentsia of the world. In fact, they very much follow Plato's philosophy, in which the ruling class rules because they're in the intelligent, and everyone and those who need leadership. They used to call them sheep, and so they would say that your average person is an unintelligent sheep who wouldn't know how to lead themselves, even if they had the opportunity. And so they believe that by stepping in and taking rule that they're doing a good thing, that they're actually encouraging a better world. Now, I believe differently. I don't think it would be a better world. At one time I did, but now I realize that I was deceived.
Now, you basically left about 10 years ago.
Yes.
You just couldn't take it anymore. Tell us what went through your mind, how you finally left, and how you were threatened, perhaps almost killed by them, but survived and now living a completely different life.
Yeah, well, I couldn't take it anymore because these people, the higher up you go in the group, the less pleasant the people are, in my opinion. At least at the lower levels, people aren't happy about being in it, but they're doing their job because, at least to some degree, they believe that they're doing a good thing. But as you rise through the ranks, you realize that these people aren't doing it because they believe in any kind of a betterment of the world, but they're laughing because they have wealth, they have power, and they want it, and they're holding on to it.
And I bet even these mid-level, if a lot of these mid-level people would leave like you, perhaps they wouldn't have as big a stranglehold as they have on most every element of our society now. It's incredible, down to, even these peace groups, have been infiltrated by people that, it's just absurd. I'm just watching my country, and I wake up every day wondering, my God, is there really a hope? I guess a lot of these mid-level people don't leave because of the money, correct?
Because of the money, because of the power. Everyone has a hook, and they know that. And so there's different things that hold people. For a lot of people, it's because everyone in their entire family's in it. Is to leave the group. You're giving up your money. You're giving up your family, your mother, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your best friends. All of my best friends were in it, too. I was literally surrounded by people who
you come from a multi-millionaire family, correct?
Yes, yeah. But I do want to address that now. I believe there is hope, though. I'm a strong Christian, and I believe that there is hope through Christ that's greater than any power of the Illuminati or any of their goals for our world. And I do know that. I believe that in the end, if a person has a strong faith in Christ, that it can overcome, because these people are very, very, very evil. And I believe, though, that God is greater than their evil, even though, they would argue that if you talk to them.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at what we're seeing now. And the reason, folks, that this is important is that we're talking to somebody involved in it, that lived it, that actually lived a daily life, had children, went to work, and then got herself involved all through birth into this group who felt, they want to basically control us. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is that the involvement here, most people just, they view it kind of like a TV show. They really don't believe it. They do believe it, but when it confronts them basically, when you look them in the eye, I mean, that really changes the whole thing. And what I mean changes it, it brings it to reality. And the reality is, folks, we need to have people come like you talk about it so that we can deal with the problem. We have to change the mindset of Americans. They are too naive. Listen, Europeans know this. I mean, Italian people that I live with aren't as naive as my American friends. They have to understand these people are killers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me just on that note come back, and I believe we're taking a break right now. Did I hear some music? No. Yeah, I did. Thought I was hearing things. But we'll be back in 3 minutes, Vali, and I know I want to listen to some more of this on the Genesis Communication Radio Network. Okay, back on the Investigative Journal, and we're not even going to get into the high-powered names and waste our time. We know who they are. Vali, I want to hear from you. What are some of the methods? What are some of the methods they use to make money?
If you can think of a legal activity, they're involved in it, and that's another reason for their being covert. For instance, I know that gun running, white slavery, child prostitution, pornography, the selling of drugs. There's many ways they did it. Careers, selling of military computer codes, different things like that. But normally when something like that's happening, like say, let's say that they're involved in child prostitution, an actual luminist will not be sitting there during the transaction. Instead, when the transaction occurs, that's passed to someone else who's passed to someone else. And by the time the money's been laundered 2 or 3 times, it actually gets to the person behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's easy to find a patsy to do the dirty work, so to speak, correct?
Oh, yeah, because then if they get caught, I mean, they're expendable.
Yeah, exactly. Now, your role as a mind programmer, tell us some of the things you used to do, I mean, with people, and I guess your purpose was to reinforce into members this Illuminati mindset, correct? Yes.
The goal of training was threefold. It was to instill loyalty, to instill obedience, and to help the person. Well, we called it helping, of course. Now I know that was wrong, but to help the person to do their job or role within the group better. Some of the training was to instill teachings, the teachings of the group, like the oral history and traditions. Training covers such a broad area that could be a 6-hour discussion, but basically they use positive and negative reinforcement. If someone performs well or does what's expected through the programming session, then they're praised and rewarded. If they do not comply or are not showing the expected behavior over and over and over again, then they're severely, brutally punished. We used to have trainers' tables. We would strap them. We would induce the person into hypnotic state. We've used drugs, and there's experimental drug protocols being investigated even now. Human experimentation is going on during, through training sessions. They're gathering data on people's responses. But training can cover anything from teaching a child to recontact, to call, to have blind loyal obedience to their leaders or the people over them, all the way through assassin programming, all the way through courier programming, teaching a child to be a hacker. They have hackers in the group too. I mean, it just covers a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
So
I know about those guys.
Really?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on the receiving end of them every now and then.
If you know about them, you're ahead of most people, because most people don't even know. You know, this isn't your teenage hackers when I say hackers, by the way. I'm talking about they actually teach children and teens with aptitude to do this.
Okay. All right, good. You know what I wanted to get into this one point with you. If you have you ever thought about where would you be if you stayed with them? Where do you think you would ended up? Were you moving up the chain? How?
Yeah, I was. In fact, the reason I left is that the man over me was moving to regional leadership, which is one step below national here in the U.S. But I was supposed to take his place, but I was asked to do something that I refused to do at that point. But I also had a generational seat on the German Council because I was born in Germany, and it's called the Council of 144. There's the 144 elders in Germany on the Bruderheit, and I had a seat on it as well. So I would have held two seats, one here in the U.S. and one in Germany.
And, of course, with that goes wealth and a very easy lifestyle. Right now, I know.
Yeah. In fact, both of my parents are very wealthy.
So now they left. When you left, you were strictly penniless, correct?
Yes. And the little money I did have, my husband cleaned out all the accounts, everything, every penny. And
they separated you from your children for a long time, and it goes on and on.
Yeah.
There is a happy ending to this, though. You finally got back with them. Can you tell us?
Well, yeah. My ex and I were going through a very difficult custody battle. He was saying in court, this woman is nuts. This isn't happening. There is no such thing. I'm not a cult leader. She's psychotic. But then finally what happened was I finally got unsupervised visitation of my children. And the children immediately disclosed they were being hurt. I went to CPS. CPS didn't believe them because they said this kind of stuff doesn't happen. So my ex came. I was federal prison because I refused to let my children go back and be hurt. My ex came out. The children confronted him and said, we don't want to go back and be hurt. And my ex, it took him a few days, and he said, I need to think about it. I need to think about it. And he decided to leave the group too. So he left and later came to me and asked my forgiveness for putting me through those horrible years when he was basically holding my children hostage, saying, you know, if you don't come back, you can't have the kid.
What kind of reactions do you get from people when you tell them, or emails you get from some of the articles you've written? What kind of reaction do you get?
I get a lot from around the world saying, thank you for being someone who at last is telling the truth. Thank you for your help.
Okay, good. And I really...
I'm
going to take a break, but I thank you, too, for getting on here with me. We'll be back in 3 minutes for our final little segment with Svali on the Genesis Communication Radio Network. Okay, back with our final segment on the Investigative Journal. I wanted to ask Svali, what do you think, Svali? You know, these people are embedded in most every high-level position in our government right now, and high-level media positions. That's the reason why you're not getting the true stories. The people have been getting a slanted version of so many different important stories like 9/11, the Iraqi War, the impending war coming up in Iran, which is another way of they're setting Iran up. It's simple. They function off a war economy. They want to see people basically die. What do you think our hope is right now? How do you think this thing's going to play out from your perspective?
Well, I'm going to tell you how I really believe. One thing that helped me leave the group was I became a Christian several years ago, and I was reading Revelations in the Bible, and I was just absolutely stunned to see it describe exactly what I've been taught, but from a different perspective. I mean, I do believe that there will be a coming leader, because ever since I was a child, they always look for he who is to come. But I think he's going to be overthrown by a greater leader, and that's Jesus Christ. And that's my hope and my faith.
Yeah, and whatever faith you are, I mean, a higher power or whatever, it's the same thing. I mean, for those of us who may not believe in Jesus Christ, for those of us who do, I believe if you look at it from your perspective, there has to be some hope, because you know something, if you just give up, I mean, One thing the Italian people did, and I talked to them, one thing I found, they just said, I do not want to pay the black, they called them the black order. I will not pay them any of my money. So I found out that in Italy, about 60 to 70% of all the money there was unaccounted for. They didn't have the strict IRS laws and everything. So one way the Italians battled back was just by ignoring them and going off on their own. And I found that to be something that, you know, listen, we have to think of ways. I mean, these people control a lot of things. They have a lot of money, and it makes it difficult. But we have numbers. And I hope that people listen to you, people like you, and wake up a little bit because, you know, you were involved in it. You know how devastatingly dangerous they are. I mean, they'll kill you as soon as look at you, and I know you're frightened a little bit. After this interview, what are you going to do?
I'm not going to do any more interviews for a very long time. Because I really don't like drawing attention to myself, to be honest. But I decided to do this simply because I think people need to know that this is real, that these people are real, that they do have an agenda. And to be honest, in part, I'm doing this in restitution for what I did when I was younger. I saw a lot of horrible things, a lot of evil people, and they need to be stopped. And that's my greatest prayer. And I think that people do each do whatever they can to try to stop it. Maybe it could.
Well, Zvali, I want to thank you so much. And Dave Wilcox, I know you were there. If you want to just say hi to Zvali, I'm running out of time. You got 30 seconds.
Zvali, do you have any message for somebody listening to this right now who might want to get out and is in family right now?
I want to tell them you can get out. They're liars. They are liars. They tell you that no one gets out, that everyone dies, or they'll track you down, hunt you down. You can get